Right. So in the last part of this lesson, we learned this formula, right? Y equals A times B to the X. And as I just solved the homework problem too, if you have, something that is growing exponentially, whether it's 2 points that have exponential growth or like bacteria that's growing, you can use this formula to write an equation for it. Okay, that's, for things that are growing like that. Now, another place we can use exponential equations is if you have compound interest. So what is this term compound interest? So if you have a bank account, right, like a savings account, and suppose they tell you, okay, so a compound interest bank account would be like this. So suppose you put in $1,000, then they give you interest, and now you have $1,100. Now, when they're going to give you interest again, they calculate it not on the original amount, but on how much you have in the bank now, right? So suppose now you have, let's say, like $1,250. The next time they're going to calculate on the $1,250 on the new amount. That's compound interest. All right, so there is a formula for it, which you're going to memorize. This is the formula. All right, lots of new terms and variables in here. So A, that's the final amount. Like when you get your bank statement at the end of, whatever the term, how much money you have in the bank account, then that's A. P is the principal, but not like the principal like Miss Howard. P is, the principal is how much money you had in your pocket to deposit when you went to open up the bank account. So that's pretty much the initial amount. Then we have R, which is the rate, but you have to write it in decimal form. We have T, which is the number of years. And then there is one other thing, which is N. This N value is how many times a year the bank pays you interest. So number of times bank pays you in a year. Okay? All right. So what are some values of N? So for example, if it says it's compounded yearly, how many times does that happen in a year? Once. So N is 1. If it happens monthly, that happens 12 times in a year. So N is 12. Semi-annually, like if there's a semi-annual sale, right? That's twice a year. So N is 2. Quarterly, N is 4 because 4 quarters in a year. Bi-monthly, that's every other month. So that happens 6 times. And then weekly, that's 52. Right. So let's take a look at this. A sum of $8,000 is deposited into an account that pays 5% interest. Find the balance of the account after 15 years if interest is compounded quarterly. So let's go through and see what all this is. What's the $8,000? That's not A. A is the final amount. This is P, the initial amount, right? Now, it says it pays 5% interest. Now that 5%, you have to convert it to a decimal. And remember how we do that is you bring the decimal point over to the left 2 times. So this will be 0.05. We want to find the balance after 15 years. So that's my time. And if it's compounded quarterly, that means N is equal to 4. All right? Okay. So A is equal to P 1 plus R over N to the power of NT. So let's substitute all that stuff in. So A is 8,000, 1 plus 0.05 over 4 to the power of 4 times 15. That N, right, you put it into the equation twice. Okay, now often I have on a test a problem like this where you start out with $8,000 and then 15 years later a student gets that they made like $54,320,726,000. Okay, please, when you solve these, ask yourself, does my answer make sense? Usually, if a student forgets to convert this to a decimal, then they get something like in the billions. Okay, I wish I could start out with $8,000 and make it into like 54 billion in 15 years, right? Not happening. So go ahead and take out your calculators. Right, so we have 8,000. 1 plus 0.05 over 4 to the power of 4 times 15. And then look, when you press enter before you write your answer down, make sure what you meant to put in is the same as exactly what you did put in. So, that's what I have right now. Does it matter if there's a 0 before the point? No. Well, so this is a bank account, right? We're talking about money. That means when we round, it's got to be, so it's $16,857.45. And you have to round correctly.
Wait,
yeah.
My calculator only gave me...
Okay, I'll talk about that in a little bit, please. You have to round correctly, right? Because this is about money in a bank. And imagine if a bank was off by even a penny from each and every single one of their accounts. Mm-hmm. Years later, this is like millions of dollars of embezzlement they've done, right? So you have to get this thing right. Let's take a look at this next one. So a savings account offers 0.8% interest compounded bi-monthly. So let's just talk about this for a minute. Bi-monthly means n equals 6. So bi-monthly means n equals 6. Okay. Now, let's take a look at this interest here. All right. So it says 0.8%. So the rate is 0.8%, but you have to move that decimal still to the left 2 times. That means it's got to be 0.008. Okay? So that's the rate that you're going to put in. Again, this will make all the difference. Now, it says if 150 is deposited in this account, that's your initial value of P. What will the balance be after 20 years? Okay, so A is P, 150. 1 plus 0.008 over 6 to the power of 6 times 20. Okay, so go ahead and plug this in, get your final answer, and I want you to go ahead and write your final answer on your paper, and I'm walking around to check. Always the same. This is money, so you decide what you're going to round to. I'm not going to answer that. No. You should know if it's money, how to round if it's money. How do you round if it's money? Okay. Okay, we're not sharing answers right now. I'm going to walk around to check, okay? So the answer you get on the calculator is this. Now, whenever you're talking about money, it's got to be dollars and cents. And when you go to the store, it's always like, something dollars and like 43 cents. It's always 2 decimal places. So you have to know that. Most of the time, they're not going to tell you what to round to, because if it's money, you just need to know, okay? So this one, if it's 007 and I have to round to the second place, it's got to be 01. So it's got to be 176.01. Okay, now your homework is no, you have to round absolutely correctly. Okay, so now your homework is going to be the 3 questions that you had it done in the last one, but you have to continue it just after the last problem that you did. So it's all going to be one homework assignment. That's why I just said, if you look, I just said homework 38 and then homework 38 continued. It's just going to be like one homework assignment. All right, so let's